Hello. So this is just a video to try and explain a little bit about the truths of family court, how it works, how it's failed us in my particular case with my 4 children. I think it's important because people don't understand when you say it's been through court for 4 years. People assume that the court is very similar to like a criminal court, where I mean, we all know, criminal court has a jury, has a judge, it's very much cross-examined, you're there with your barrister and you can say, like, the other party will say something and the barrister will be like, oh, well, come on, I've got this evidence. Well, on this day, look, I've got this solid evidence to say you did this. And then they get to say, it puts them on the spot then, and then you can see them trip up over themselves. Family court doesn't work like this, okay? Family court is basically a pantomime of who can act. And it's an organisation set up to milk you, get you through court, never looking at any evidence, never getting a chance to contest anything, and just to draw proceedings out for money, for power, control, and in some cases to steal your children, okay? And it's hard to understand when you haven't been through family court to understand this is the system, and it does happen in England. This is what I want to try and get across, is the steps that they take to do this and the coercion that goes on from the courts. It is criminal. What they are doing to victims of abuse is just criminal, the way they treat us, okay? So what happens when you first get to court? Whoever applies will fill in a form, a C100. And what that does, it's applying for access to see their child. So it will be a legal document to say, that the father sees the child on this day, the mother's this day, this is how you split the holidays, this is how the times are split up, who's responsible for, the school things, and blah, blah, blah. So you receive this form, and a date for court. So then you can then submit what's called a C1A, which is a response to that. And so if there's any domestic abuse or child abuse, you can then put it in this form, which then it's like a counter application to say, look, these are the concerns that I have. So then you get a call then from CAFCASS with a safeguarding call. So what they will do is they'll call you and spoke to both parties and see, what we've got to say, what issues you've got around in contact at the minute, what are the risks, what's working, what isn't working, and that's all documented. And then what happens then, behind the scenes, okay, CAFCASS get this, they suss it out, then they will plan then a route of how these proceedings are going to draw out based on what's gone on in this safeguarding call. So then they will think, right, the end result for this, I want these children in care. The end result for this, they need to go to the abuser. Or in some cases, like, it will work because it has to work in some cases. Okay. So it's just what I need to get across. It is at this stage, it's all the proceedings are set out with how it's going to end. Right. So then you get a first hearing called FHDRA. They call it a FEDRA. So it's the first hearing and dispute resolution appointment. So in this hearing, it looks to see if there should be a fact-finding hearing, which is a hearing. It can be a day. It can be, with mine it was 6 days, to see what is truth. I'll come on to that later. And then they decide then if CAFCASS get involved, if they need to do any further reports. So in my case, it was like a Section 7, which is a legal report written by CAFCASS. Now, CAFCASS are the children, like, legal social service, basically, for the courts. They work for the courts. But they're separate to social services. Although they do collude together, they are separate. And then, so what happened in my case, the father was already having contact centre, I agreed straight away because I was like, yes, you know, you can see the children supervised, it's fine. And that will come on more because even the contact centre in the end wasn't safe. But I agreed to that because I wanted to show, you know, I do want the father to see. I just want him to get the help to get better so he can see the children safely. And I said all this to all the workers. So the courts then decided no fact finding because, you know, we've got police information, you know, they can look at the police records. There was police records of the child abuse, there was some police reports of the abuse, although the police wouldn't look into coercive control with me. It was a relatively new law at the time. The county I was in have got no convictions against this crime. It's a very unknown sort of crime. There's not much training on it, and it's very hard to understand coercion if you don't know, and if you don't know what you're looking for. And it's very person specific as well. No two cases with coercion will be the same because the abuser will know what affects you. They know what to do to get you in that place, to be that petrified and that scared of speaking up, and control you to stop seeing your friends and family and everything. And yeah, more about that in another one. So yeah, they said no fact finding. Section 7 report then, they had the police reports, which she said she read, but she did tell me at the time, the lady that I've got, she hadn't had time to read them. They speak to you about concerns, and what they have, CAFCASS, they have pathways, what's called pathways. So it's basically a tick box. So they don't actually listen to the responses you give them. Okay, when you try and say, they'll ask you a question and you'll talk about the experiences. Basically it's a tick box. They're talking negatively about the father. This is on mine, it was an alienation pathway they used. If you look on the CAFCASS website, it will mention all about their pathways. I mean, they don't mention this in the court reports, pathways. But this is to show, you know, it's set out one way, the other way. You will go this route, you will go this route. So mine it was, and with the children, like, oh, the children negative taught the father, they positive taught the mother. Well, if you've got abuse, you know, that is genuinely what a child will do. Well, my father's done this to me, you know, my father threatened me with guns, he hit me on the head. They're going to say negative things. You know, they might say positive things as well, because sometimes when they see the father, he can be good. And that, again, he can be good, but that is sometimes an act to pull them back in, to do more abuse, to push them away again. It's just the cycle of control. So it's very confusing for children as well. But anyway, these pathways, and it's just basically set up. So when I came to court, there was this practice direction that had just been brought in the month before, which was practice direction 12J. And that's a legal requirement in court to look and prioritise domestic abuse. So they're meant to look into domestic abuse, and if there has been abuse to the mother or the father, they're supposed to see, well, it's harmful for the children because they're still perpetrating abuse through the child to get to the other parent, which is dangerous for children. You know, if this happens, it's safer for the child not to have contact unless it's safe, or for the parent that is abusing to do some work, you know, domestic abuse perpetrators program, to try and be better, be reassessed, you know, and then contact can continue, you know, when abusers worked on themselves and they stop using the child. Okay, this doesn't happen. But the pathways on mine, it basically said it was targeted from day one. Mothers alienated the children. Now this report didn't mention the guns, it didn't mention the hitting, the physical abuse, didn't mention the mental abuse, what was going on, didn't mention that the father was pushing himself away from the kids, scaring the kids on purpose to get to this stage. And the worker I had knew all of this, and she said to me, well, it sounds to me like even supervised, you know, he's unsafe. Like, and she kept saying to her, how can contact progress? How can we figure things out in court? What's the end result supposed to be? You know, what can you see to fix this? I was like, well, he needs to get help. You know, he needs to do a perpetrators program. She's like, you're not answering my question. She was vile, this worker. But anyway, I said, well, you know, you can't afford contact. He's showing, you know, he physically cannot afford it. And I said, well, I've got these emails actually on a joint email that he's been spending like £70 on taxis every week, you know, but he can't afford a contact centre for £40. She's like, I'm not interested about that. He's saying he can't afford contact. So I was like, oh, well, there's free ones. I know there's free centres in churches that they do. She was like, well, you obviously don't understand this because he is that dangerous, even supervised, you know. How can you protect your children? And so you think, you've got to kind of say these things, because if you don't say these things and show you're trying to look for a resolution, you get targeted for this alienation, right? So anyway, after the Section 7, they ordered a CAFCASS contact intervention service, which is their providers. They seek another agency to supervise the contact, to try and, you know, write down everything that's gone on. Everything isn't mentioned, but things that have gone on. So this was 5 sessions that he had for 2 hours a week. Children attended all them sessions. There still were issues. The children come out crying. They said, you know, Daddy would take us around the corner and he'd say these things to us. But obviously these aren't written in reports. And the workers would be sitting there sometimes, even emailing me. So I knew, you know, you're not watching my child 100% of the time. You're not watching him if you're doing emails. And I've had work to say, you know, I'm here, I'm working, and I'm answering my emails today. So these workers are working and not looking properly and supervising your children. And when it's mental abuse, you know, it's not just that he might hit the children, he might be a danger. And actually, when we had this contact centre intervention, actually, going back, you have like a pre-meeting, CAM meeting they call it, contact assessment meeting, I think it is. And I mentioned about the guns. I said, look, none of these reports mention this, but this is the history. So the children might mention these things. They were like, guns? Like, I don't want to supervise him. I don't, you know, I explained, showed them pictures of what had happened. They're like, this is too unsafe. We're taking it back. We don't understand what CAFCASS are doing here. Took it back then to say, look, why are we supervising this? This shouldn't be happening. They got rid of that worker. They told me actually the worker had left. She hadn't left because I saw her a few months later. They just gave different workers, right? And even they said to me at the time, you know, what proof have you got of the dad still having the guns? I was like, well, I've got friends that have heard him. You know, yes, but what proof have you got? Well, he has them in his car. You know, when I looked through the car last, he's still got bullets there on show. Yes, I know, but have you reported it to the police? Yes, I've reported it to the police, but they don't want to know. And then she's like, well, there's no risk then, right? So you're just thrown all the time. You're just battling, and no one wants to listen. So the core assets, basically, I'll stick with this at the minute. We had 5 sessions, and then they were like, oh, it's going so well, we're going to order another 6 sessions. And now, to me, these sessions weren't going well because the kids had come back really upset. The father was then really like, we had FaceTime 2 times a week, which was court ordered. The children were really distant with the father on FaceTime, and he wasn't like engaging with them. He was like not interested in what they were saying. He kept hanging up on them. He didn't have the full half an hour. He'd only have like 5 minutes, and then he'd be like, well, I've got to go. And then the kids would be upset, and the kids would try and show him things like schoolwork, and he just wouldn't be interested. So I assumed that this contact wasn't going well because the kids had come back upset. But they were like, oh no, there's glowing reports. We've ordered another like 5 lots. So during the next 5 lots, I was targeted, right? I turned up for contact and they weren't there at times, and I'd phone them and like, well, I'm here, the children are here. And they're like, oh yeah, the father cancelled last minute. Okay, and another time I cancelled last minute because I had a funeral to go to. And I wasn't going to go to the funeral, and last minute, decided. And anyway, I gave them enough notice to say, I think it's 48 hours notice I gave them. And for that, it was reported, oh, there was lost funding, she didn't turn up for contact. But he didn't turn up sometimes. It was like, oh, that's fine. It's one rule for one rule for another. Another time it was Christmas, so I arranged to see the children. I think it was 23rd of December. I thought, great opportunity, can we book it in this day? Then they can get the children's presents. It's close to Christmas, it's close to another one's birthday. And on the day then they messaged me saying, no, that the centre's closed. And I actually checked up on this. I went over to the centre myself, and the centre was open because I emailed them actually first, and they were like, no, the same company are here and they're supervising, the same workers you've got are here. And then I got blamed for him not having this contact. So everything you get blamed. But the thing is, you have these reports written about you in court, and you've got all this truth. Well, look, actually, I messaged the centre, they were there. You know, I'm being set up here. And they're like, well, you can't bring that up in court. You know, these things are for a fact finding, or these things are a final hearing. You know, we have to wait for the final hearing, and then the workers will be cross-examined. They'll be put on a stand, and then you'll be able to say to them, look, you know, this is what's happened. All right, 4 years on, we've never had this final hearing. 4 years on, we've had a fact-finding hearing. We've never been able to cross-examine this guardian that's manipulated and lied the way through. So this contact centre intervention, actually, when I looked at them, they're actually also an adoption agency, right? So it's all part of this gravy train, all to set you up. And they did set me up, this company. Just going back to the Section 7, actually, what was recommended in that was my eldest child, who was completely traumatised from her dad, petrified of her, that's been threatened to be killed, had lots of physical abuse and mental abuse. It said she should go and live with him or go to care, because I wasn't keeping her safe online. She basically posted a video on YouTube, which was a bit silly. You know, she was 9-year-old, wanting to be a YouTube blogger. It was on there literally 2 days. She'd created a new account. You know, and the way my ex answered that when it was questioned was like, oh no, what, you know, very concerned. And me was a bit more like, yeah, I know it's bad and I'll take it down. And it was just a different way I answered it. I was like, she was like, do you understand that people will message her? I'm like, yeah, and to be honest, she's very savvy. If anybody messaged her she didn't know, she would tell me straight away and she would block them. I mean, you know your child, don't you? But anyway, because of that, she's like, well, she can't keep her safe online. She's better living with her dad. So she's better living with her dad that's done all these things that you won't mention in a report. Anyway, after the Section 7, we had another addendum one about it. And the first time the Section 7 was written, there were so many fabrications and twisting the children's words. And even I said to my daughter sometimes, did you say this? And I knew the truth, because I knew what she would have said. But she was like, no. And I didn't ever show her this report, and it's not a report for children to read. But I knew things have been twisted around. And even with me, what I said, you know, things were just fabricated, taken out of context. So the next section, I was like, no, the school, they need a witness. So they had a witness, the school sat in with them. This time she just said, well, I couldn't do my job properly because I had somebody watching. And the children have changed their mind now, they've changed their memories, and now they're saying this. But they didn't say this the last time. But they did. She's just a very manipulated, calculated worker that puts words in the children's mouths. And I've got recordings of the way she works and what she says to the children, and I will put that online to explain what exactly these workers do and how dangerous they are with children. So anyway, after this report again full of fabrications, said to my solicitor, well, this is wrong, I've got the evidence here to show this. And she's like, no, final hearing, you know, when it gets to that, we will be able to contest it, but at the minute we just have to go along with it. And then we're going to have the psychologist involved, so the psychologists will understand, and you can tell all these things to them, and then that's another bit of evidence you've got. So the psychologist, he was amazing, to be honest. He said some very strong things to me to say, you know, I don't listen to anybody. Nobody will tell me, advise me on how to write my report. I will do it in my own words, and I will come up with my own conclusions. And he looked at me right in the eye when he said that. I thought, that's strange, but I was just like, okay. Didn't really say more. And he understood. He saw all the kids, and he said, you know, there's no way this father can see the children unsupervised. It's too dangerous. He's done these things. He's, you know, he's a danger. And he does recommend a fact finder to get to the bottom of it. But he said the children haven't been coached, they're recalling their memories, they're in danger, they I'm trying to find the word that he used. And my sons are too young to be able to give any coherent description of what the children were saying. So if anything happened, the children wouldn't be able to go back to the police or anyone to say exactly what happened, because one of the children's got autism and one of them was a bit lower on the scale. So he said, they can't protect themselves, and they still can't, these boys. So anyway, the court didn't like this psychologist's report. The CAFCASS Guardian didn't like what this psychologist said. So they ordered a section 37, which is looking into care proceedings because they've got concerns of the welfare of the child. But they don't have concerns of me. They've got no concerns with anything. I'm a parenting, mental health, drugs, alcohol, nothing. But they're concerned that I am hostile for the father to see the children. And yes, I'm not hostile. I'm just trying to protect my children for what has happened, what he's still doing to the children, which you lot won't document. Right? So it's, again, this alienation route, mother's bad, father's brilliant, father's done nothing wrong. They won't mention anything the father's done. So after this, section 37, the social said to me, they understand, they get what he's doing. They said to me, our hands are tied. Our legal team amend the report. So we know what you haven't said this. Our legal team have amended it and there's nothing we can do. We just have to sign it off. So the legal team changed the reports. I've never met the kids, these legal teams. This is the route we're taking. This is how we have to make the reports. So anything I said with what he's doing, see, my ex, what we were doing on the supervised FaceTime calls, he'd manipulate the children, he'd put words in their mouths. My child with autism has got parrot talk, so he copies things back, and he knows it's not true what he's saying, but he says it, the anxiety, because he knows his father's going to say something. Like, baffling, but it's like, why did you hit me on the head, Daddy? And the response would be like, well, I didn't do that, my boy, it was a hug, and your mummy's made that up. And my son knows what happened, and that's the response my son will give. Like, why did you hit me on the head, Daddy? Well, oh, but you love me, don't you? Mummy's making it up. And he knows that's not the case, but he knows that's the answer his dad's going to give him. So that's framed me in the contact centre. It said, this is what's been said. My son, this boy has said, oh, you didn't do it, Mummy's making it up. Okay. He's been very clever, my ex, of what he's done. It's very, very disgusting for the children. But anyway, he used to stalk the kids. They're going through court. What happened? He stalked them. He's harassed us. He's turned up at the house to scare them. He's left things lying around in our garden, so we know he's been in the garden. But if you mention that to the police, they're like, oh, there's no evidence, or you just gone mad, or oh, it doesn't matter, just bin it and just laugh about it. So all the time, it's like, these people are unaccountable. They're allowed to do these things to us. So he frustrated the contact. Sometimes he didn't turn up at the contact. Sometimes I would book in the contact centre and he would cancel my appointment. He would phone up pretending it's me. And then you turn up and they'll be like, oh, you cancelled it yesterday. And you're like, I never cancelled my contact. Where's the email? And then they're like, oh, safe, data protection, we're not allowed to. It's important what's gone on in when the father was with contact, the things he used to do to push the kids away more. So it would play into this alienation hands. They'd be like, well, look, the children are getting scared. All this contact report's good. But what he would do is take them round the corner and he would say things to them like, your mummy's going to die. I'm going to have you full time. You'll never see your mum again. This is what I'm going to do. So the kids then were just clinging on to me, not wanting to go. And they're like, well, they're too close to the mum, the mum's making them like this. I was just trying to keep them healthy and happy. Anyway, after section 37, they said, right, contact's got to move on unsupervised. I was like, but why were these concerns? I've told you about these concerns. Look, this is what he's doing. I've shown you the evidence. Yes, I know, but we've been told by the courts it's got to move on regardless. Yeah, but it's unsafe. Where's these reports? Where's the, what did I ask for? A risk assessment to say, look, these guns. Look, he's hit them here. Look, he's done. None of these reports have mentioned the truth. Like, what's going on? Why won't anybody protect the children here? You know, I was blooming strong with her. And, oh, I know, but, you know, this was a student. I've been told I've got to move contacts on, and it doesn't matter what harm the children are going through. I've been told it just has to continue. So my children are allowed to continue to be abused. And I know what his plan is. His plan is to push me away further and further. So he wipes me out of their lives, because that's the end result of alienation. Okay, is then they'll stop seeing the alienating parent. But I'm not an alienating parent, you know. I've been fair, and I've been actually quite good at sending the kids a lot of times, knowing what's going on, but saying to them, look, this is going on, sending them the evidence. Oh, I know, but we have to carry on. So anyway, because of that, I was like, no, this is wrong. I've always said all along, if these kids have to go unsupervised, I'm off. I'm leaving the country. So that's what I did. I went to Spain. But, you know, even it was just, I could see something happening. And people said to me, you know, these children will be killed from him. You know, he's that much of a danger. He's that angry. And, you know, the way he uses his guns illegally. And when he flips, he has such an angry personality, you know. I've explained in other videos. But anyway, so Spain, and then the father applied for us to get back to England, and then England knew that, you know, there's a clause to say if you've abducted children that there's a grave risk of harm if they're sent back. You know, if they're sent back to the father, there's a grave risk of harm. So Spain acknowledged that. They said, you know, yes, no return to father. If they return to England, they're returning to their mother, or they're returning to England, social services to look after. But England also has already said they've got no concerns with my parenting. They've got no concerns with me. And they knew I had ran to protect my children. It's even reports I ran just to protect my children. The police said as well they couldn't do me for abduction, because they said I had full custody anyway. I had a live-in order that they lived full time with me, with no set days to see their father anyway, because he was only supervised. So they couldn't do me for abduction. And they said, well, it was very likely that she's fled to protect her children, because we can see the children are at risk. So social, what they did then, more games. The courts ordered a non-molestation on my mum and dad, just for revenge that I'd ran, basically, which unfortunately ended my dad's life, because he was that heartbroken by what they did. And it was full of fabrications, full of lies. My dad did nothing. My mum and dad did nothing but to try and work with my ex to try and pay the bills of the house while I wasn't there, and to sort, you know, things out. So my mum and dad were just being neutral, not threatening at all. You know, they'd never shouted at him, they've never hurt him, they've never done anything. It was always very like, we're doing this for the sake of our grandchildren, you know, very fair. But then my ex ordered this on them. And that was basically revenge. So anyway, yes, return. We did have a call when I was in Spain. Okay, we got to Spain. And the next day, actually, after I fled, the court said, well, 3 are going to change and live with their dad, and 1's going to go and live with her estranged godparent. And I thought, well, you're sending 3 to live with their dad? Well, I've just explained, like, all of this is going on. So I sent position statements to the court saying, look, this is the reason why I ran. Look, these workers have manipulated all these reports, and they're missing off these vital things. You know, the father's danger. He's done these things, but no one will mention it. Nobody will stick up for it. Me thinking the judge will actually be interested that these workers have done this. You know, I didn't realise the judges actually are all in on it as well. They know, and they collude behind the scenes of what's going on. Your case is just, they're all in on it. Even the solicitors, they're all in on coercing you to say, look, oh, it doesn't matter about this report, we'll get it to final hearing and we'll contest it. Like, where's the final hearing? Like, I've lost my kids now. There's been no final hearing. I've never contested any of these reports. I've never been allowed to. You know, I keep saying, this is wrong, this is wrong. I've gone through like a fine tooth comb. This wasn't what's said. this isn't what's said, this is what happened, here's the evidence. Solicitor's like, no, we can't do this. So anyway, England then applied for a care order to get the children back to England. Okay, that's the only way they could have got the children back. And they applied for this care order while I was living in Spain for 3 months. So I wasn't in the country. They ordered an order when I wasn't even there in the country. But Spain said basically it had to stand. You know, we were still in Brexit at the time. We were still in Europe. Brexit hadn't happened. We were still in Europe. And they'd have to return. So that's basically what happened. We were in Spain 10 months. We only need another 2 months to be safe. You know, the kids out here were just thriving. They were just changed people, changed children. They were going to school, Spanish school, also bilingual, but they went every day without fail. Okay, come back, and now my daughter refuses school. She's that traumatised by what's happened. She just can't get to school. Anyway, they got back to England. They went straight to foster care. They lied to me about getting back. And I also spoke to the social workers when I was in Spain, actually. They said, look, we know what's going on. We don't blame you for running. We think you're a brilliant mum for protecting the children. I've got this recorded. It's going to go online. You know, you did what you did to get away. You protected your children. You're amazing. We know there's no alienation. We know you haven't done anything. And it's him making it up. You know, there's no alienation in this case. Okay. I'm not allowed to submit this to court. They won't let me, this conversation with this worker. So when I got back to England, they were taken to foster. They lied to me, saying, oh, you can go and live with your mum. They had no intention of that. They wanted these children, but they gave me so much false hope. They said, oh, well, we'll do this fact finding. We'll promise you to do this fact finding. You know, it will all get to the bottom of. My solicitor wouldn't let me submit what I wanted to with what was going on during proceedings, with what he was doing to push them away, stalk them, harass them, what was happening on FaceTime. I've got recordings to show the manipulation, the brainwashing, him cancelling my contacts, and it wasn't me. And look, I have been framed for all of this. Solicitor said, oh no, that's not for the fact finder, that's for the psychologist to look at. You know, if you tell the psychologist that, she will understand and she will look at this. Okay, so when I got back, saw a psychologist, told her everything what was going on. She generally understood. Anyway, I got this report back, and this report recommended that I see the kids maybe 2-3 times a year. I've got to have psychiatric help to get over the fact that the father isn't dangerous. I thought, well, how do you know this father isn't dangerous when you haven't even looked? I haven't had a chance to explain to you what happened. Because you told me you didn't want to look at the history. You only want to look at going forward. So how can you know if the father's not safe if you didn't want to know what's happened? Who's ever going to listen about what's happened to these kids? No one wants to know. And then the psychologist didn't want to listen to the kids. She just said to my daughter was distraught. She was like, I don't want to hear about your abuse from your dad. I don't want to know. That's not what I'm here for. I haven't been court ordered that. I've been court ordered to look into the future for you. And then she's like, well, you know, when a child is willing to speak to someone about the abuse they've suffered, which is difficult, and somebody doesn't want to hear them, can you imagine how you feel for a child if you were told, oh, I don't want to hear about what your dad's done? When you're there and she's trying to protect siblings as well, to say, look, you know, my siblings are at danger here. So the psychologist, yes, recommended that without looking at any evidence. It's just, he said this, she said this. Obviously, he can act. He can pull the wool over people's eyes, and he knows to say these right things. So going back, actually, when a few reports before that, the father had therapeutic parenting work. Same as me, I had it with CAMS. After this psychologist, the first one, said they shouldn't see the children unsupervised. That's what they recommended, therapeutic parenting work. Now, that's not what he needs. He doesn't need therapeutic parenting work. Yes, it's good. He needs psychiatric help, you know, which is what the psychologist said. You know, he needs, I think it was CAT analysis, catalytic analytic therapy, to look into his past, look into his abuse when he was younger, you know, how to get over this trauma, you know, stop this pattern of coercion, stop this pattern of control, you know, try and help them to not be like this. That's what he needed, but that's not the work the court ordered him to do. They just said, no, therapeutic parenting work. So we did this 10-week course, an hour a time or something. And all that does with an abuser and a manipulator is give them the words to say. So when they do talk to professionals, when they do talk to psychologists and social services and CAFCASS, they've got this phrase to say, which they've put in their memory bank, like therapeutic way. But he can't do this therapeutic parenting. Like, he still can't do it. He could do it in front of people for like an hour supervised. You get him behind closed doors. And it's obvious he hasn't changed with the things he's still doing now to me and the children. He's still doing these things. But anyway, this psychologist, she deserves another video because there's more with her. But yeah, she didn't speak to my son with autism. My son just didn't get on with her. He didn't like the look of her, and that's the case sometimes with autism. If you don't have that first impression, it will just put him off. So, he was ranting, and she come up with the conclusion that my son hated Spain, and I don't know where she's come up with that conclusion from, because my son didn't hate Spain. He just said it was traumatic for him to go, but she'd never spoke to him. Like, they weren't in trauma here. They were in trauma going back to England and leaving what we had behind, because what we had in Spain was an amazing life, free from torture and abuse and just normality. And they were just changed children. But anyway, when I did get back to England, social services have whittled down my contact. So I was seeing them 3 times a week. And then it was like, well, you can't see them all together now. You can only see them once a week separately. 2 one time, 2 another time. And eventually they've whittled it down to once a week. And the psychologist has said, because they only recommended that I see them 2-3 times a year, this is what they've gone by. And we've never had a chance to cross-examine this psychologist. We've never had a chance to ask her questions. Why have you come up with this? What reasoning have you got to say the mother's, no reasoning at all. I was perfectly sane in the interview. I'm a perfectly sane person. But I also do the tick boxes. Okay. But these tick box questionnaires don't look at trauma. They don't look at post-traumatic stress. It might just say, oh, she's prone to over-exaggerate. She's sensitive. Well, you are a bit sensitive when you've been abused, when you've been mentally abused. But generally, I'm a good person. I'm fighting for what's right for my children here. So anyway, this fact-finding then. Fact-finding is 6 days, and I've kind of gone on to that. The fact-finding isn't like criminal court, where you've got this evidence. You can bring more evidence in either. So that your abuser will see all the evidence you've got. So they'll be able to study it for months. Right, I know now what I can say to get away with this. I know, there's nothing like in criminal court when they can say, oh, I didn't reply to that. And then your barrister will be like, oh, on this date, I've got this bit of evidence. Look, you did reply. What's your response to that? We've all seen it in movies. Family court isn't like that. The judge is like, oh, well, he said he didn't do that. All right, but I've got the message to say afterwards, this isn't the case. He's lying here. I've got the message. I've got the proof right in front of me here, look, on my laptop. So, yeah, it's not submitted as evidence. I can't look into it. So it's like, well, he's allowed them to tell perjury. So I said in other videos, I lost my solicitor on day 1 of the fact find, and I walked into a trap. I had to do it all myself. So I had to cross-examine people myself, which I had a bit of help with other people to prepare my questions, and we did get some of them. We did trip some of them up. But the judge is like, oh, well, they can write what they want, these judges, honestly. The witnesses saw things, and then it's like, there's one case where, like, one witness saw a cat being shot out of a window, and this cat, died. He shot it in the head. He saw it. And he explained about what happened. I mean, I say, no, I can't remember if he said he didn't do it or not, or he shot at the cat, but it didn't die or something. But the judge said the reason why she decided this fact didn't happen was because my friend never went down to check if the cat was dead or not. And my friend didn't bother telling me about it. Well, he was probably in shock, with what happened. He was probably, you know, he did see the cat being shot in the head, and it backed into a bush and died. And I think it's probably a reaction when something like that happens. It's probably a traumatic response. Your natural reaction would be, oh, I'll go and see if this cat's alive, it's all right. But I think sometimes you're that shocked with what's happened, and you don't want to then, and then the other person's controlling and saying these things. You're putting a bit of a, like, I don't know what to do sometimes. These abusers are very clever at making you do things different to how you would do with a normal person, okay? Like healthy person. So, fact finding, basically, the judge didn't want to see my evidence. I said, look, I've got this evidence. I want this extra evidence that my solicitor wouldn't let me. No, we don't want to know this. But you're not going to know the truth then. You know, and my ex admitted certain things. He admitted doing certain abuse to the kids, but he would downplay it. Oh, well, I've learned and I've got better and I'm not going to do that again. So the judge is like, oh, what a lovely man. But this is still going on, and he's downplayed what he did. So he would admit to some of it, but then twist it around. Oh, she's just got this completely out of context. That's not exactly what happened. This is what's happened. And it's just twists it all around. So after the fact finder basically said, they come up with the conclusion that I'm lying. None of this abuse happened, but there's no evidence that they wouldn't let me submit the true video evidence, the call recordings I've got to say what's going on. You know, there were some photos in there of evidence of the kids. Oh, yeah, but you could have done it. But I haven't done it. You know, I've even got the police report. I had a police interview from which my daughter was interviewed, I was interviewed, he was interviewed, the father. Now these DVD interviews have been taken out of the court bundle. So I was like, well, if you watch the DVD from back in 2017, you'll say now he's saying a completely different story. You know, it's changed. And you'll see my daughter's story backs up with what's saying. Because my daughter got to do, she was given a solicitor, she was allowed to do a ABE interview, which is Achieving Best Evidence. So she was allowed to do an interview to say exactly what had happened, and the judge will get to see it. You know, we all got transcripts of it. The judge said, you know, I don't believe her. The mother's made her say all these things. Well, you know, 4 years ago she said exactly the same things. You know, her father did threaten her with a gun. You know, he did hit her on the head. He did do these things. He is doing these things. And she's like, I just think she's protecting you. You've manipulated her to think these things. Again, set up from the start, you know, this alienation route. So what's happening now after this fact finding? They have stopped my contact with my 4 children. Not allowed to see them. Not allowed to speak to them. 2 months. 3 months now nearly, I think, for the younger 3. Not seeing them. Right, they're still in foster care. You know, that's another story. They're not having a good time at foster care at all. Okay, they're being harmed, they're being damaged, they're being abused. The system are abusing them by what they're doing to them. As I said, my child that's 8 hasn't seen his dad since early 2019. So it's been over 2 years now because of what his father did and pushed him away and made him scared of the gun, made him scared he's going to be shot and killed, or his mum. You know, it's the things that dad's done to make him that scared, but he's done it too much to this boy. This boy is petrified of his dad from what he's done. So saying, well, the fact findings are that it's all made up. None of that happened. You know, he's got to see his dad. So what they've done is they've locked him, my son, in a room with his abuser that's done these things to him, because that's what the psychologist recommended he did. Stop seeing his mum so he will accept his dad. So what they did to my son, they court ordered him to move out of his foster home away from his sister, because they're saying his sister's manipulating him as well not to see his dad. She isn't. She didn't. Okay, they've all got their own memories. They all know what's happened. They all know the truth. Yes, my sister's protective. My sister, his sister, my daughter. But she doesn't tell them what to do. She doesn't say, don't go and see your dad. You know, she's I've just blamed her because she's such a strong, feisty character that they're scared of her. So they wanted them apart. So they moved my son out of the foster home for 2 months. So he wasn't allowed to see his brothers. He wasn't allowed to see his brothers. No, one brother, 2 sisters. He wasn't allowed to see me. He wasn't allowed to see his nan. And this just has broken my poor son. You know, I've got recordings of him when he was moved, and my daughter was filmed him. And she's quite savvy. She said, you know, if ever you get moved away, if anything ever happens to you, you know. So she found him. She found where he was. She found the foster home he'd moved to. You know, 10 minutes down the road. Within a day, bless her, she'd got his address. She is savvy. Like, how on earth has she done that? Don't mess with her. She's on it. But anyway, yeah, my son. So he's been locked in a room with the abuser. It's all in black and white. It's all in reports to say this has gone on. He's had to climb up trees at school to get away because the workers are trying to take him to see his dad. And he's like, I'm not going, I'm scared. I've told you I'm not going. And they'll be like, well, we've had an important judge that's decided that you have to go because nothing's ever happened to you and your mum's made it all up. Can you imagine? That for a child. So more things have happened. You know, they've lied to say where he's going to get him in the car and then took him and his dad's been there. Another time they've lied and then he's thought he's going to come and see me. Bearing in mind he hadn't seen me for weeks at this age. Walked in really excited to see me and it was his dad who he was scared of. Can you imagine that? For a child, that heartbreak to be known you're excited that you're going to go and see your mum that you haven't seen for ages, and you walk in and they've tricked you. You know, that's the most cruelest thing anybody can do. So obviously that work didn't work, so they stopped doing that work. You know, they stopped trying to force him. And he said, you know, I don't want to see him, I don't want to see him, I'm not seeing him, I'm not speaking to him, I'm not doing anything, I'm not looking at him. He wouldn't even look at him in the room. These are all in reports. So they kept him out of this foster home more for punishment. They kept him away from his siblings and everybody until they could move the eldest one out. So they moved the eldest one out so he could move back in. But the work they did then is to stop them seeing myself and to then... Now they're trying to do this systemic work, they call it, which is a person that does work with the children. It's supposed to be a life story. So it's a life story of lies, basically, to say, look, none of this that your mum's saying happened to you. You know, you're remembering something that your mum's put in your head. Your dad's safe. We've come up with the conclusion he's safe. You know, we've had all these important people working all these years that's come up with these really important issues, and the judge is very important. This is what she's decided, that your mum is needs some help and you're not allowed to see your mum, which is so far from the truth. Obviously the kids have memories, you know, and I've had reports now, the kids are just, they're not themselves. They've just got no self-esteem. They're unaffected. My son with autism sits in his room crying all day. You know, I've got recordings of him saying, you know, why can't I see my mum? This is ridiculous. You know, my mum's never hurt me. My mum's never done anything to me. My mum's good. I want to be with my mum. I don't care where I am in the world with her. Spain was the best place I lived in the world. It was our best home. I'm never going to see that home again. You know, he's there sobbing. I've got these recordings. And, you know, my dad, you know, he's hit me. He's done these things to me. You know, he's horrible. He's dangerous. And they're making me see my dad. Why do I have to see my dad? And why can't I see my mum and my nan and my sister? You know, what's going on? I hate my life. And even the 8-year-old, when they were doing this work with him, and I saw him the first time where they said, you know, but we hadn't accepted his dad, well, he was allowed to see me again for a short while before they stopped that contact again. He said, you know, Mummy, I just want to die. You know, what they're doing to me, I don't like what they're doing to me. You know, I don't want to see my dad. My dad's unsafe. They're forcing me to do these things. I just want to die. An 8-year-old boy saying these things. and supervised contact. But the contact people, they don't hear these things because they don't hear what's going on. They don't listen. They're doing their work on the laptop. Heartbreaking. So the schools now, they said, they're not themselves. My son with autism, a headbutt in the wall. He's just, and he says, he's ranting all the time. Well, why? What's going on? Why are these things happening? And the school's about to say to him, well, yeah, we agree, Jensen, because he's in a special needs school. So the way they deal with him is very different from the way a mainstream school would deal with them. But they know, the schools know what's going on. They know how dangerous the father is, and they know, it's just torture for these children. I know the schools are upset themselves with what's going on. They have a heart of gold, the workers at the school, and they, the teachers are upset by what's going on themselves. I've had parents' evening and I've spoken to the teachers, and, some days they come in and they're, my son, he's just so low, and she says, well, when I see he's like that, I'd kind of sneak him a biscuit. And, they said they've got no self-esteem, they're not smiling, just torture, being ripped away from their mother. And now they're not allowed to see their sister. They're not allowed to see their nan. They've already killed off their granddad. But they have to see the dad who's done these horrific things to them, because that's what's been decided. I actually think these courts have no intention of sending them to the father. They say they do. They want two to go to him. So that means they would want two even to stay in foster care. Now, I know what happens with children long-term foster care. They did want, my ex wanted my eldest to go to a children's home, right? And I think we all know what goes on in children's homes. We all know what scandals have gone on and what happens. And the way that some children can come out good from it. But we know what goes on. I've got no one at the minute looking after my son, right? He's basically an orphan. He's not got his mum. He's not got his nan. He's not got his sister. He does have his brother and his sister at the minute. His brother's got severe autism. He sometimes can't get out exactly what's gone on, especially if there's a traumatic event that would have happened. They won't be able to tell anybody what's happening to them. Nobody's there to protect them. It's just heartbreaking. So the position we're in now is just, they've got to see the dad. They've got to accept the dad, Basically, they're pushing my son away that much that he's got no one. He's just, it's accept your abusive dad or it's nothing. But I just wanted to basically, that's a snapshot of what exactly has gone on over the time, and to try and explain a little bit about what happens and the way these reports are coerced and the way that it's not a court. How can we call this a court? It's a game of acting. It's a game of it's a game of control. The system is coercing us to accept. And I've been told, if I accept these findings, if I accept that there was no abuse, if I accept that I've exaggerated and I have made the children scared of the dad, I can see the children. Okay, but I have to tell the children this. I have to be there, being all pally with the ex as well, in a room, being like, he's never done anything to me or you. Knowing. And with the abuser sitting there probably laughing his head off, enjoying that. And then abusing the children mentally by saying these things. That's abuse. But the system are allowing this to happen. It's coercive control to a victim and to children. And it has to stop. People need to realise the truth behind family courts. It's not a court. Okay, it's a game of control. It's a game of power and money to try and steal your children. And as I said, in some cases it does work. You'll get someone who says, well, that didn't happen in my case. Because if it happened in every case, there'd be uproar, right? It happens in the worst, probably abuse cases, which the police have failed us on because they haven't got a conviction. And which is another part of the system. The police are trained, they're coerced to say, look, you know, there's children involved. Let's not get it to CPS. Let's not pursue these claims. Let's just get it to family court. And then, I don't know if the police know exactly the way the family court works. Most officers probably won't know, but the higher up ones will know it's part of this gravy train to get them there, to get you through the system, to actually steal your children and to traffic your children to abusers. Because this is what's going on. Lots of children are sold, lots of children go missing in care. I think England have had 30,000 children go missing from being in care, you know. It's shocking. We know what happens, we know who these customers are. These judges, the system, are just the workers. You know, they should not be dealing with children, these workers. They are not safe to be around people, you know. I know I'm going to get slated from the system for telling these truths, but people need to know what's going on, you know, how children are being treated. You know, children should never, ever be treated this way. And this is why I'm speaking up, so this cannot happen to other children, other victims, you know, has to stop. More awareness needs getting out there, more awareness. More people speaking up, even anonymously. Whistleblowers. We do know when whistleblowers come out, though, how they're punished. But these judges need to be held accountable. They're allowed to do these orders. You're not allowed to appeal. You're not allowed to do this. Oh, the judge has made this fact, you can't do this. There's no perjury. So they're allowed to lie. You're not allowed to say, well, there's perjury committed here. Oh, we're not allowed to do that because it's in family court. There's coercion that's gone on here. There's misconduct of public office that's gone on here. And the system, the social workers are abusing my children. I've got recordings. I've got evidence of what they're doing. You know, to lock someone in a room against their human rights because they've said they don't want to do something as well. And to ban them from having food, to ban them from having water, to ban them from having clothes bought from them because their clothes don't fit them. These children are just, they've been through hell. They're still going through hell. I worry for their mental health. I worry if they, at least 2 are sent to the dad. What's going to happen? Okay. It needs to change. It needs to stop. We need awareness.